Jake and I had been together for 3 years. The first 2 were fine, but the last one felt like constant emotional tension. He started checking my phone and questioning where I was going or who I was talking to. If a male coworker texted me about work, he'd get jealous. In front of friends, he'd make jokes about me being unfaithful. When I tried to stand up for myself, he said I was overreacting and that only guilty people get defensive. The truth was, I had never cheated. I was loyal. He was projecting his own behavior onto me. Teresa, my best friend since high school, practically a sister, was the one who discovered the truth. One evening, while Jake was at work, I showed her a text where he accused me of meeting someone just because I was 15 minutes late coming home from the grocery store. Teresa went quiet, opened her phone, and there it was. Jake's dating profile active that very day. His bio said he was single and looking for fun. She admitted she'd suspected something for weeks. A friend had matched with him and recognized him from my social media. Teresa had been quietly collecting proof before telling me because she wanted to be sure it wasn't a mistake. We made a plan. Teresa created a fake profile to match with him and see how far he'd go. He matched within hours and didn't hesitate. His messages to Teresa were ugly. He told her he was single, complained about me, his psycho ex, and said he was trying to break up with someone who wouldn't take the hint. When Teresa asked why he didn't just end it, he replied, "She pays half the rent and does all the cooking and cleaning. Why give that up until I find something better?" He sent screenshots of conversations with other women where they mocked me, calling me repulsive. In one text he said, "I almost gag when she tries to kiss me." A woman told him, "You're such a saint for putting up with her. I would have left ages ago." He answered, "It's complicated, but not for long, I promise." These were messages to multiple women, all while he was accusing me of cheating. Meanwhile, I kept cooking his favorite meals, doing his laundry, trying to prove my loyalty. We didn't confront him immediately. Teresa and I agreed we needed more than proof. We needed a plan, not to win him back, but to expose him thoroughly. For weeks, I performed the part of the devoted girlfriend, while Teresa continued the conversations from the fake profile. I smiled when he kissed me goodbye, cooked his dinner, apologized when he accused me of flirting with the delivery guy who had literally just handed us food, and left, all the while plotting. One night, he came home smelling of unfamiliar perfume. When I mentioned it casually, he blew up, called me paranoid, and suggested I see someone about my insecurities. He even said I might be depressed. I apologized and added the incident to my mental list of reasons he deserved what was coming. I checked our finances. We had a joint account for bills, but Jake also had a savings account he bragged about. He talked about being disciplined with money and saving for our future. A joke. Bank statements showed large withdrawals on nights he claimed to be working late, expensive restaurants, hotel charges, gift shops. I saw where to hit him: his ego and his wallet. I thought of my cousin Vicky. People always said we looked alike. She was the prettier version, taller, model thin, and still got noticed. She owed me a favor after I helped her through a rough breakup. I called Vicky and Teresa for an emergency meeting and told them everything. Vicky was furious on my behalf and agreed that what Jake was doing was emotional abuse. Teresa showed Vicky the evidence, and Vicky couldn't believe how cruel he could act while playing the victim. By the end of that 3-hour talk, I wasn't just angry. I was cold and calculating. Our scheme felt like something from a heist film, except it was real. Vicky infiltrated Jake's routine. He went to the downtown fitness club every Tuesday and Thursday. We used his public workout selfies to map his schedule. Vicky got a guest pass through a friend and positioned herself right where he usually was. The first day, she texted, "Target acquired." He stared from the moment she walked in. Predictably, he accidentally bumped into her and started small talk about protein shakes. He asked for her number. By evening, he was texting her. I sat on my couch with Vicky, reading every message. Teresa brought wine and takeout. We were fueling what we called psychological warfare. The texts were as expected: flattery, questions about her relationship status, suggestions to meet. Jake never noticed that Vicky was my cousin. We looked similar, but not so much that he'd realize. He hadn't been paying attention to me in a long time. The plan was blunt and brutal. Vicky would date him, get him hooked, drive him to spend as much as possible, and then we'd reveal everything. Meanwhile, I'd keep playing the unsuspecting girlfriend and watch him dig his grave. 3 days later, they went on a first date. He claimed a work event when really he was with Vicky. She sent us play-by-play reports. He took her to a restaurant he'd never taken me to, ordered the most expensive wine, boasted about his job and savings, and casually told her he was practically single and wrapping up a dead relationship. Vicky sent a bathroom selfie from the restaurant. I felt sick seeing him on a date with my cousin while I sat on my friend's couch plotting revenge. Teresa kept reminding me it was evidence of who he really was and that soon he would pay. Literally. Over the next weeks, he became obsessed with Vicky. He canceled plans with me, stayed out late, came home with a smug look. Vicky reported every detail. The spending escalated. Dinners, small gifts, concert tickets. Vicky was strategic. Mention a piece of jewelry casually, and he'd buy it. Suggest a weekend getaway, and he'd book hotels. She accidentally left gifts at his place so he couldn't ask for them back, then handed them to me later. My collection grew. Expensive jewelry, designer bags, even a watch, all bought with the money he claimed to be saving for us. Trips followed the same pattern. Vicky got him to put bookings on his card, then asked him for cash for her share, which he refused. After the weekend, she'd Venmo me the money she'd gotten from him. Sometimes I used it. Mostly Teresa and I split it into a revenge fund. One weekend, he told me he had a business conference in a beach town. Really, it was a romantic weekend with Vicky at a luxury resort. She convinced him she needed $800 for spa treatments and shopping. He handed it over. That funded my spa day with Teresa while he was away. Massages, facials, mani-pedis, all on Jake's dime. We even posted photos, knowing he hardly looked at my social media anymore. Those photos went into our evidence folder. Jake's lies escalated. He was working late more nights, had business trips, and once told me his mother was sick so he could take Vicky to a wine country resort. His mother called that weekend and invited us for dinner. I made an excuse about Jake having food poisoning. Keeping the charade was exhausting. I had to cook, do laundry, smile while he kissed me with the same lips he used on my cousin. Vicky recorded their conversations, legal in our state with one-party consent, and sent them to me. Hearing him call me clingy and desperate and telling Vicky he couldn't wait to be rid of me made me want to destroy what he'd built. The worst was when he said he hadn't broken up with me because it's convenient. Someone to split bills with who did all the housework. He literally called me his Roomba, who also pays rent. I smashed a glass against the wall later. Teresa came over to help clean before Jake came home. Despite the pain, the benefits of the plan mounted. Vicky had Jake buy her a new iPhone and designer shoes in her size, which happened to be mine, and a weekend yoga retreat she never attended. I used those things. Teresa and I used others. Around 2 months in, Vicky moved to phase 2. She started talking about being stressed at work and needing a vacation, mentioning places I'd always wanted to go. On a date, she broke down about never affording a real vacation. Jake offered to help and booked a mountain resort weekend, all expenses paid. The day before the trip, Vicky called sobbing that her grandmother was hospitalized and she couldn't go. Jake was devastated, the reservation non-refundable, but Vicky suggested he take the trip anyway. The minute he told me he was going on a guy's fishing trip, I texted Vicky and Teresa. Vicky had secretly given me the reservation details. As soon as Jake left for work the next morning, I packed, picked up Teresa, and drove to the resort he'd booked. We checked in under his reservation. The front desk didn't question us. We spent the weekend in luxury, spa treatments, gourmet meals, guided hikes, all charged to Jake's card. We took careful photos for our evidence locker. Meanwhile, Jake texted Vicky, pretending to be disappointed while pretending he was on a fishing trip with friends. When I returned Sunday night, he was home talking about huge fish. I nodded and asked questions while replaying the memory of soaking in a hot tub with champagne, bought by him. The pattern continued for another month. One scheme I loved was the birthday present ruse. Vicky said her friend's birthday was coming and she wanted a gift but was short on cash. Jake offered to help and bought a designer bag Vicky picked out. She gave it to me for my birthday the following week. I carried it everywhere, even on dates with Jake. He complimented it once. I said Teresa had gotten it for me. Technically true. His savings were dwindling, and he started complaining about unexpected expenses at work and suggested we might need to tighten our belts. The audacity. Between Jake and Vicky, things were moving from his side. He spoke of introducing her to friends and maybe family. Vicky kept him at the perfect distance, close enough to keep spending, but not so close as to force real commitment. I had skillfully kept Jake at just the right distance, close enough to keep spending money on Vicky, but never close enough for their relationship to move forward in any real way. What Jake didn't realize was that all of this was building towards something much bigger. Vicky had started mentioning her dream vacation, a luxury resort with private bungalows over the water, the kind that costs around $1,000 a night. Predictably, Jake took the bait and began looking for ways to make it happen. That's when we discovered he'd been transferring money from our joint account into his personal one to fund his secret life. The money meant for our bills and future was being used to impress my cousin. Seeing those transfers felt like being punched in the gut all over again. But it also fueled my determination to see this through. As the 3rd month of our plan ended, Jake was pouring his savings into this extravagant trip, buying new luggage and flashy tropical clothes. What he didn't know was that he was walking straight into the final phase of our plan. But we weren't ready to close in just yet. We had 1 more month to make him pay, literally. The best part was, he still thought I had no idea. I was still cooking his meals, doing his laundry, playing the perfect girlfriend. He still believed Vicky was falling for him, still believed he was in control. But the truth was, All the control was ours. And soon, he'd realize just how badly he'd been played. Month 4 of Operation Destroy Jake's bank account was where things got interesting. By now, Vicky had him completely wrapped around her finger, and Jake had started getting careless with his lies. He'd say he was working late, but forget to text me, leave receipts in his pockets, and once he even called me by Vicky's name in his sleep. I had to bite my tongue to keep from exploding. Meanwhile, our revenge fund had grown to almost $4,000, all cash from what Vicky managed to squeeze out of him and share with us. Even Teresa got to enjoy some of it. We'd rotate the spa days and restaurant gift cards Vicky finessed out of Jake. One evening, Jake came home stressed. He sat me down to talk about our finances. Apparently, he was having some temporary cash flow problems and needed me to cover more expenses for a while. Could I pay the full rent and maybe handle the utilities too? He promised he'd pay me back once his bonus came through. I almost lost it. He was spending thousands on my cousin, but asking me to cover our bills. Still, I played along, nodded, sympathized, and agreed to help. What else could his oblivious girlfriend do? The moment he left the room, I texted Vicky and Teresa. Phase escalation starts now. The next day, Vicky called Jake crying, saying her car had broken down and she needed $600 for repairs. Despite telling me he was broke, Jake managed to find the money within hours. Vicky took the cash, thanked him, and split it with me and Teresa. We went shopping while her perfectly fine car sat parked outside my apartment. But the real jackpot was the Bora Bora trip. Vicky convinced Jake to book this over-the-top resort. He was struggling to afford it. But she kept sending him photos, calling it their dream vacation. Soon, Jake started selling his prized possessions to make it happen. His vintage guitars, his grandfather's watch, even his crypto investments. And all the while, he was lecturing me about cutting back on small luxuries like my morning coffee or Netflix. One night, while he was in the shower, I checked his phone and saw he'd taken out a $15,000 personal loan. He was drowning himself in debt for a woman he'd known less than 4 months while telling his girlfriend of 3 years to tighten her budget. During all this, I quietly began preparing my exit. With Teresa's help, I found a secure, affordable apartment. I slowly moved out my valuables and documents, set up a P.O. box, and opened a new bank account Jake couldn't access. Still, the act was exhausting. Pretending to be the supportive partner while watching him destroy himself for another woman, even if that woman was part of our plan, took its toll. Some nights, I'd lie awake next to him, fighting the urge to scream. Teresa noticed I was burned out and suggested a mental health day. We used some of the revenge fund to visit a hot springs resort. Ironically, the same place Jake once said we couldn't afford for our anniversary. That day was pure peace. Massages, champagne, and relaxation, all paid for by Jake's stupidity. When I got home, though, Jake was waiting. He looked nervous. For a second, I thought he'd found out. But no, it was something worse. He wanted to talk about us. I braced myself for a breakup. After all, he'd been cheating for months. But instead, this delusional man got down on one knee and proposed. He said he'd realized I was the one, that he'd been distant because of personal struggles, and that he wanted a fresh start. The ring was tiny, another sign of how broke he was. My mind raced. Saying yes would buy me more time. Saying no would end the game too early. So I cried. Not fake tears, real ones, from sheer anger, and told him I needed time to think. Jake agreed, even suggesting I stay with my parents for a few days. I knew he just wanted me out of the apartment so he could have Vicky over. I went to Teresa's instead and told her and Vicky everything. We couldn't believe how absurd it was, proposing to one woman while planning a romantic trip with another. We decided to use it to our advantage. Vicky would act extra needy and demanding, pushing him to spend even more. I drag out my decision and use the time to finalize my escape. Over the next week, Jake became desperate for reassurance. He texted me constantly, professing his love and begging for an answer. 10 days later, he called, saying he needed to talk urgently. My heart raced. Had he found out? I met him the next day at a coffee shop, wearing a tiny microphone so Teresa and Vicky could listen from the car. But Jake didn't know anything about our plan. He wanted to talk about money. He admitted he was in serious financial trouble. Maxed cards, loans, debts to friends. And he wanted me to take out a loan in my name to help him consolidate. He promised to pay it back, saying it would show we were a team. The audacity was unreal. I told him I'd think about it, pretending to be torn. The moment I got back to Teresa's car, we burst out laughing. Jake's nerve was unbelievable. That night, Vicky texted him saying she'd gotten a surprise work bonus and could now contribute to the Bora Bora trip. All he had to do was finish the bookings. Of course, the reimbursement would never come. Within days, Jake borrowed from his brother to finalize everything. The trip was set for 2 weeks later, non-refundable, all under both their names. With 12 days to go, Jake kept messaging me about the loan, acting desperate. I agreed to meet him for dinner to discuss everything. I picked the same restaurant where we'd had our first date. Fitting, since this would be the end. I made sure to look perfect. Red dress, flawless makeup, calm demeanor. When I arrived, Jake looked hopeful. He noticed I wasn't wearing the engagement ring. After some small talk, I told him I'd looked into the loan and could probably get $25,000 approved. His face lit up. Then, I added one condition. I wanted full access to all his financial records before applying. His face froze. I played innocent, saying I just needed to understand what I'd be signing up for. He fumbled through excuses, insisting it wasn't necessary. I stood firm. He looked sick, but agreed to show me later. I told him I'd go to the bank Monday. He had no idea I wasn't going anywhere near a bank. By Monday, he was nervous but hopeful. I told him the bank needed more time to process things. 4 days before the trip, Vicky threw in a twist. She called Jake crying, saying her grandmother was hospitalized and she might have to cancel. Offered to postpone, even to go with her. After 24 hours, she called back saying things were fine and the trip could proceed. Jake was so relieved, he sent flowers to my new apartment where Vicky was staying. 2 days before the flight, Jake was unraveling. He hadn't gotten the loan, he was broke, and he was hiding his suitcase whenever I was home. The night before he left, I told him I was going to stay with Teresa for a few days. He looked relieved, thinking it would make sneaking off easier. He hugged me and lied about going on a business trip. I smiled, knowing exactly what was coming. As soon as I left, the countdown began. The next morning, Jake left for the airport. We watched through the security app as he rolled his suitcase to his car, smiling. Teresa, Vicky, and I drove to the airport to watch everything unfold. At 8:45 a.m., when Jake reached the check-in counter, Vicky sent the message we'd prepared, a selfie of the 3 of us flipping him off with the caption, "Surprise! Hope you enjoy your $17,000 vacation for one. Your girlfriend knows everything. We watched his face shift from confusion to horror. He tried calling Vicky, blocked. Then me, also blocked. He sat there for 20 minutes, looking completely destroyed. That evening, Jake showed up at the apartment building, but I'd already changed the locks. The cameras caught his meltdown in the hallway. Over the next few days, he sent messages ranging from apologies to rage to desperate pleas. We ignored them all. I left a letter inside, explaining everything we knew and warning him that if he tried to contact me or Vicky again, we'd expose everything to his boss and family. A week later, we wrapped it all up with a spa weekend funded by the last of the revenge money. While we relaxed, Jake sent more messages through his brother's phone, accusing us of ruining his life. The irony was rich. Months later, Jake's still drowning in debt, living with his parents, and working 2 jobs. The Bora Bora trip was non-refundable, his credits wrecked, and his savings are gone. Meanwhile, I'm thriving, promoted at work, living comfortably, and planning a real vacation with Teresa and Vicky. Last week, Jake showed up drunk at my building at 3 a.m., crying into the Ring camera, begging for another chance. I watched the live feed from bed, forwarded the video to the girls so we could laugh, and sent it to security to have him removed. 20 missed calls later, he gave up. I slept better that night than I had in years. That, my friends, is karma, and it's beautiful.